The galaxy was calm, the stars were shining as always, and the great galactic empire ruled everything with pride. They believed no one could ever challenge them. They had fleets of warships, armies spread across 1,000 planets, and weapons that could burn worlds. They felt safe. They felt untouchable. Yet something was about to change at the edge of known space. In a dark and silent sector where no one normally traveled, a strange signal was caught by the long-range scanners of the Empire. At first, the officers thought it was nothing, just a meteor or a lost freighter drifting too far. But then the screen showed something different, a shape, a shadow, moving slowly yet with great purpose. It was massive, larger than any warship the Empire had ever built. The officers leaned closer to their monitors, their voices filled with doubt. What kind of ship could be that big? It was shaped like a spear. Long and sharp, its surface was dark, like black steel absorbing the light of nearby stars. It carried no banners, no symbols, no colors. It was just a silent monster drifting closer and closer. The news reached the high command of the Empire within hours. Admirals gathered in great halls to watch the recordings. Some laughed, saying it was probably an old mining ship. Others frowned, their eyes narrowing as they felt something different. One young officer whispered, "This ship is built for war, not for work." The room grew quiet, no one wanted to admit it. But the thought had entered every mind. The Empire had ruled for centuries. They knew every species, every fleet, every rival, but this design was unknown. It did not match any race they had studied. It was new, mysterious, and terrifying. When they tried to send signals, asking for identification, asking who commanded the ship, there was no reply. Silence. Only the great black warship moving closer. Whispers began to spread across the stations and colonies. Some said it was a ghost ship from a forgotten war. Others said it was a weapon sent by ancient gods to punish the Empire. Fear grew in the hearts of common citizens. The mighty Empire tried to calm them, but even the admirals felt something cold in their stomachs. A scout patrol was sent, small, fast ships to investigate. Their cameras showed the warship up close, its surface covered in strange markings, not painted, but carved deep into the metal like scars. The scouts circled carefully, sending images back. The size of the ship was beyond belief. It was like a moving city. The Empire's largest battleship could have fit inside its shadow. Still, no signal came from the ship, no lights from windows, no movement on its hull. It looked dead, but it was moving with purpose, and that was the most frightening thing. A dead thing should drift. Yet this one advanced directly toward the heart of the Empire. The scouts grew nervous, their voices cracked as they reported. Then something happened. The warship turned slightly, like an eye looking at them. A giant opening on its side glowed faintly. Not bright, just a red pulse, the scout pilots shouted over the comms. One moment they were alive. The next moment their signals vanished. Silence. Their ship's gone, nothing left but static on the screens. The admirals in the command halls froze. The laughter stopped. The voices died. Every officer stared at the empty monitors where the scout feeds had been. Destroyed in seconds, not even a trace, one admiral whispered. No known weapon can erase a ship so cleanly. What are we facing? Rumors spread faster now. People across the Empire began to panic. On the trade routes, in the colonies. Even on the core planets, everyone heard the story. A warship darker than space, larger than fleets, destroying ships without effort and still not saying a word. The government tried to hide the news, but fear is stronger than silence. Merchants told the story, soldiers told the story, even children whispered it. The nightmare ship was coming, and no one knew why in secret. The High Council of the Empire gathered, they argued, they shouted, but no answer came, no strategy seemed enough. How do you fight what you cannot understand? How do you face an enemy that does not answer? And then came the strangest detail. The warship's path was not random. It was heading straight toward the capital systems, a direct line across the stars. The admirals calculated and realized if it did not stop, it would reach the Empire's heart within weeks. Still, the warship did not speak. Still, it did not slow down. It just advanced, silent and unstoppable. A shadow across the galaxy, a shadow that made even the strongest empire tremble. And so the story began, the day the silent warship arrived, the day the Galactic Empire first felt fear, not from rebels, not from rivals, but from something unknown, something waiting in the dark, something that would change the galaxy forever. The warship kept moving, black and sharp against the stars, silent as death. The Galactic Empire could no longer pretend it was harmless. Their scouts were gone, erased from existence, and the unknown ship did not even slow down. In the high command chamber, admirals argued with each other. Some demanded an immediate attack, others begged for patience, but no answer came from the silent giant. Every signal they sent was ignored. It was like talking to a wall made of steel, a wall that kept coming closer. Finally, the Empire decided to show strength. They sent not just scouts this time, but an entire interception group, 10 heavy cruisers fast and armed, each one strong enough to flatten a small planet. The people of the Empire were told not to worry. The Great Fleet would handle it, but deep inside no one truly believed. When the cruisers arrived near the warship, they spread out in formation, their weapons glowing, their captains shouting commands. They demanded once more, "Identify yourself, this is Imperial space." "You are ordered to stop." Silence followed. The only sound was the hum of their own engines. Then without warning, the black ship moved. Not fast, not dramatic, just a shift, a turn, and the stars seemed to bend around it. One cruiser opened fire. Bright energy bolts shot into the void, but before they even touched the surface, the warship's hull shimmered. The bolts dissolved like water on hot stone. A second later, the cruisers screamed. A red light blinked on the side of the warship, a pulse of energy brighter than suns, and 3 cruisers vanished. Not broken, not burning, just gone. Erased in silence, the rest of the fleet panicked. Alarms rang, pilots shouted, orders turned into chaos. The admirals watching from afar leaned closer to the screens, their faces pale. What weapon was this? No explosion, no debris, only empty space where ships had once been. The Empire had fought hundreds of wars. They knew every weapon in the galaxy. But this was something else, something unnatural. The cruisers tried to retreat, tried to regroup, but the black ship was faster than it looked. Huge yet graceful, it glided through the stars like a predator. One by one the cruisers fell, until only 2 remained. And then even those vanished. Their screams cut short, silence once more. The warship stopped moving for the first time. It hovered, massive and still, like it was waiting then, across the Empire's channels. A voice came, deep, human, calm. It said only 2 words, "We are human." The room of admirals froze. The words echoed again, "We are human." The officers looked at each other, confused. Humans, that weak little species from the edge of the spiral arm. They had no fleets, no power, no standing. They were barely noticed in galactic records. But the warship was real, the destruction was real, and the voice was real. The message repeated, calm and cold, we are human. The news spread faster than fire, across spaceports and colonies, across trade routes and military bases. Everyone heard the words. The people laughed at first, calling it a trick, but laughter faded quickly when they saw the images. When they saw the empty space where cruisers once floated. In schools and markets, in bars and factories, the question spread, who are the humans really? Some said they must have found alien technology. Others whispered they had been hiding their true strength all along. Soldiers remembered old stories of humans fighting endless wars on their homeworld. Wars that destroyed nations, yet they always survived, always rebuilt. The admirals searched every file, every record, trying to understand. They found little. Only notes of humans being stubborn, hard to defeat, living on a dangerous planet with storms, volcanoes, deserts, and oceans full of predators. A place where survival itself was a battle. Now the Empire understood, perhaps too late, that humans were forged by struggle, shaped by endless war, and now they had brought that experience into space. The black warship did not move, it only watched, like an eye staring at the Empire, waiting, daring them to try again. No demands, no explanation, only those 2 words, we are human. Fear spread in places the Empire thought unshakable. Admirals who once mocked fell silent. Governors on distant planets reinforced their defenses. Merchants refused to travel. Even the people on the capital world felt something they had not felt in centuries. Dread in the Grand Council chamber, the Emperor himself asked the question no one wanted to answer. If this is one human ship, how many more are out there? The Council gave no reply because no one knew. The galaxy had changed in a single moment. The Galactic Empire, ruler of stars, had met something new, something hidden. Something born of war and survival, and that something had a name, human. For centuries, the Galactic Empire believed it knew every species in the galaxy. Every race, every culture, every fleet. In their great archives, humans were listed as nothing more than a footnote, a small and scattered species living on a dangerous blue world far from the core. The files described them as primitive, weak, unimportant, the kind of species that would never rise above minor trade and exploration. No one in the Empire feared them. No one even respected them. But the black warship had changed everything. One single ship had erased Imperial cruisers as if they were toys. One single ship had spoken words that echoed across the stars. We are human. Suddenly the old records looked like lies. Suddenly the galaxy was asking, who are the humans really? Scholars began digging into forgotten reports and strange stories started to surface. Stories that had been ignored before. Stories that now made sense. There were records of human explorers who had traveled too far with ships too small, yet somehow survived when no one else could. There were stories of colonies that were thought lost, only for humans to emerge years later, scarred but alive. There were tales of humans fighting each other in wars that lasted centuries. Wars that destroyed cities, continents, even nations, but still they endured. The more the Empire studied, the more they realized that human history was different. Most species in the galaxy grew soft after reaching stability. They built peace, they avoided conflict, they preferred safety, but humans were born in fire. Their homeworld was a place of storms, deserts, floods, quakes, and predators that killed without mercy. Survival was never guaranteed. It had to be fought for every single day. And it was not only nature that challenged them. Humans challenged each other again and again. They built weapons, armies and empires of their own, and then they destroyed them. But every time, instead of vanishing, they grew stronger, more cunning, more dangerous. It was a cycle of war and rebirth that shaped them into something rare, a species that did not fear destruction, because they had faced it 1,000 times and always returned. The Empire realized something terrifying. Humans were not the strongest because of their size, not because of their technology, not even because of their weapons. They were strong because they refused to die, because they learned from every loss, because they turned suffering into skill. And now that spirit was in space. Now it was forged into steel and engines. Now it moved in the form of a warship so vast and terrible that entire fleets fell before it. If this was just one ship, then what kind of fleet were they hiding? What kind of empire were they building in the shadows? Rumors began spreading that this ship, the Nightmare ship, was not their first. Some claimed humans had been preparing for centuries, building far away in silence. Some claimed they had discovered secrets no other race could understand. Energy that erased ships without fire. Shields that bent the laws of physics. Tactics so brutal and unpredictable that even the Empire's best admirals could not imagine them. In the markets of distant colonies, merchants whispered, what if humans had been pretending all along, hiding their strength until the galaxy grew lazy, until the Empire believed no one could challenge them? And now, at the perfect moment, they revealed their true power. Others argued the opposite, that humans were not conquerors, that maybe they had built the warship only to defend themselves from something worse, something beyond the galaxy. But even those voices carried little comfort, because if humans built such a weapon only for defense, then what horrors had they already faced? Among the citizens of the Empire, fear turned into fascination. Holoscreens replayed the images of the black ship again and again. Children whispered about humans with glowing eyes. Soldiers dreamed of what it would be like to fight beside them or against them. Poets wrote about a species that rose from the dirt of a deadly planet to strike fear into an empire of 1,000 stars. In the capital halls, politicians argued endlessly, but one question always returned. Why had the humans revealed themselves now? They could have stayed hidden forever. No one would have suspected. So why appear? Why send a single ship? Why destroy only enough to show power but not enough to conquer? The silence of the warship was almost worse than its weapons, because in silence, imagination did the rest. The admirals imagined fleets waiting in the dark. The governors imagined humans landing on their worlds. The emperor himself imagined a galaxy where his throne was no longer secure. And so the Empire studied, learned, remembered. They pieced together the puzzle of human history, and every piece told the same truth. Humans were not weak. Humans were not small. Humans were not finished. They were a species born from nightmares, and they had only just begun to step into the stars. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire felt the one thing it had long forgotten, the one thing it thought it had erased from the galaxy: fear, and all because of a name once dismissed as meaningless, a name now whispered like a storm across every world: human. The Galactic Empire could not sit still any longer. Their pride was wounded, their fear was growing, and their people demanded answers. The black human warship hovered like a shadow in the stars, silent, patient, unshaken. The destruction of the cruisers had humiliated the Empire, so the High Command made a choice. They would strike back with overwhelming power. They would prove to the galaxy that no single ship could stand against them. The order spread across the fleets. War drums echoed in every sector. Admirals summoned their best captains. Shipyards released their most advanced destroyers, battle cruisers and carriers. Within days, a massive armada was assembled. Hundreds of ships lined in formation, their engines blazing, their weapons charged, their crews chanting the anthem of the Empire. From the outside, it looked unstoppable. A storm of steel and fire ready to crush one enemy ship. People across the galaxy watched through broadcasts. The Empire allowed it, confident this battle would restore their image. They told the citizens not to fear. The nightmare ship would soon be dust. Markets stopped, schools paused, factories silenced. Everyone turned their eyes to the battle zone. The Armada entered the sector where the human warship waited. The Admiral spoke with arrogance, demanding once again for the humans to surrender. Their voices filled the channels, calling the ship a trespasser, a mistake, a fool's dream. But as always, the reply was silence. The black warship did not move, did not answer. It just drifted, its hull swallowing starlight like an endless abyss. Then the Empire opened fire. The sky lit up with thousands of beams, missiles, and torpedoes. The void turned into a storm of energy brighter than suns. Every weapon known to the Empire was unleashed at once. Soldiers cheered as they watched the storm engulf the enemy. Surely nothing could survive. Surely even a monster ship would be torn apart. But when the light faded, the cheers died. The human warship was still there, untouched, unbroken, drifting forward calmly as if nothing had happened. The admirals stared in disbelief. The captains shouted in confusion. The crews trembled. Their strongest weapons had done nothing, and then it was the humans' turn. The warship shifted and the nightmare began. A strange vibration rippled across space. Sensors screamed warnings no one could understand. And then ships began to vanish, not explode, not burn, just vanish. Their signals cut off instantly. Entire destroyers gone in a flash of red light. The Empire fought back desperately, but the warship moved with impossible grace. Massive yet faster than their fastest frigates, its weapons unpredictable, sometimes erasing ships with a pulse of light, sometimes cutting them apart with beams sharp as blades, sometimes turning their own missiles back against them. Every tactic was new, brutal, and precise. Within minutes, dozens of Imperial ships were lost, their formations broken, their admirals shouting nonsense over the comms. The human warship did not waste energy. It did not fire wildly. Every strike was clean. Every strike was final. Fear spread inside the Armada. Seasoned soldiers who had fought in 100 campaigns now begged for retreat. Some ships even turned away without orders, their captains refusing to face the nightmare. The Empire had always ruled through fear, but now that fear was against them, the admirals grew desperate. Ordering carriers to launch swarms of fighters, thousands of small craft filled the sky, buzzing around the warship like angry insects. For a moment it looked like they might overwhelm it, but the warship released something new. Clouds of tiny machines that shimmered like dust. The fighters flew into them and were torn apart. Shredded like paper in a storm, the sky cleared in seconds. Silence returned, watching from the capital. The Emperor clenched his fists. His proud armada was crumbling before his eyes. What should have been a victory had become a nightmare for all to see. His empire's strength was being torn apart by one ship. One human ship. The survivors of the armada tried to regroup, but the warship pressed forward, its weapons striking with cold precision. Every Imperial tactic was countered, every formation broken, every strategy useless. It was as if the humans had studied the Empire for centuries, learning their every move and now used that knowledge against them. Finally, the order was given, retreat. The once proud armada scattered, ships limping away, crews crying out in shame and terror. Out of hundreds of ships, only a fraction survived. The rest were erased, lost in silence. The warship did not chase, it did not mock. It simply stopped again, waiting as if daring the Empire to try once more, as if warning them that the nightmare was far from over. In the aftermath, whispers spread faster than fire. The Empire had been defeated. The unthinkable had happened. One ship against a fleet, and the fleet had lost. In taverns and markets, people spoke with awe. In palaces and military bases, leaders trembled. And in every whisper, one truth grew stronger. Humans were not weak. Humans were not small. Humans were something else. Something the galaxy had never seen before. And their warship was only the beginning. The Galactic Empire, once feared by all, had just been forced to taste its own medicine. Fear. And for the first time in centuries, its throne was shaking, its power questioned, its future uncertain. And above it all, a black ship hovered in silence, reminding the galaxy that the age of humans had begun. The wreckage of the great battle still drifted in silence, broken ships turning slowly among the stars. The Galactic Empire had thrown an entire armada at the human warship, and still the nightmare ship stood untouched, calm and waiting. The survivors who limped back to the capital whispered the same truth. The Empire's fleets were powerless. In the Grand Council chamber the air was heavy. The Emperor sat on his throne, his face pale though he tried to hide it. Admirals and governors filled the hall, their voices clashing in panic. Some claimed the humans must have stolen forbidden technology. Others swore the ship was not real but some kind of illusion. Yet all arguments died when a new signal appeared. It came not from spies, not from rumors, but from the nightmare warship itself. For the first time since it entered Imperial space, the humans sent a transmission longer than 2 words. It was decoded and projected for all to see. The voice was steady, calm, and without fear. This vessel is not our strongest. This vessel is only a test. The council froze. No one breathed, only a test. The words burned like fire in every mind. If a single test ship could destroy a fleet of hundreds, then what kind of fleet did the humans truly command? Were there dozens more, hundreds, or thousands? The thought alone was enough to shatter confidence. The transmission continued, the human voice declaring that they had not come to conquer. They had not come to enslave. They had come to send a warning. We fight tyrants, we fight oppressors, we fight those who crush the weak beneath their boots. Your empire has ruled through fear for too long. Now you will face something greater than fear. The word spread across the empire faster than any fleet. Citizens who had lived under iron rule for generations whispered in awe. Was it true? Were the humans not conquerors but liberators? Rebels cheered in the shadows. Slaves on distant mining worlds prayed to the stars, waiting for the nightmare ship to come and free them. But inside the halls of power, the empire trembled. The admirals argued again. Some claimed the humans were bluffing. They said no species could build such weapons in secret. No species could hide such strength. Maybe the warship was unique, a trick, a single miracle. But others saw the truth. They remembered the words, only a test if this ship was a warning. Then humanity's real fleet would be beyond imagination. The Emperor's advisors begged for action. Some demanded the Empire retreat, change, make peace before it was too late. Others demanded more fleets, more weapons, more sacrifices to crush the humans before they revealed their full power. The council cracked with division. Fear had broken their unity. Across the galaxy, fear turned into chaos. Colonies rioted, soldiers deserted. Governors wondered if they should stay loyal to the Emperor or secretly send messages to the humans. Even among the high command, there were whispers of betrayal, of surrender, of switching sides if the nightmare ship truly was only the beginning. In the markets and streets, the people no longer laughed at human weakness. They spoke of humans as myths, as demons wrapped in steel, as saviors carrying justice. Children pretended to be humans in their games, striking down empires with wooden swords. Merchants carved the shape of the black warship into charms and sold them as protection. In a matter of days, humanity's legend grew larger than the empire itself. But the humans were not finished. They sent a second transmission. Shorter but sharper, we will come again. We will come not as one ship but as many. We will come not for conquest, but for justice. Remember what you have done. Remember who you have broken. For the galaxy will no longer bow to tyrants. The Emperor smashed his throne in rage, his voice shaking as he shouted that it was all lies, that the Empire still ruled the stars, but even he knew his words carried no weight. The silence of his council, the fear in their eyes told the truth. The humans had struck not with fleets but with terror. The admirals studied the wreckage left behind, searching for answers, scanning every shard, but they found nothing they could understand. Human technology was alien even to their vast knowledge, energy that erased ships, shields that defied physics, weapons that bent reality. It was as if humans had stepped into a future the Empire could not see. And yet the humans had held back. They had not destroyed the capital. They had not burned planets. They had not conquered. They had only shown a glimpse, only left a warning. It was like a predator showing its teeth but choosing not to bite. The message was clear. The humans were not interested in empire. They were interested in something more dangerous, justice. The very word shook the foundations of imperial power. For centuries, the empire had survived by convincing the galaxy that justice was impossible, that strength alone decided fate. But the humans spoke differently. They spoke with certainty. They spoke as survivors of 1,000 wars. They spoke as if justice itself was their weapon. And now every citizen of the Empire wondered, what would happen when the humans returned? Would they bring fleets that could erase entire armadas? Would they strike down the Emperor himself? Or would they spread their message until the galaxy rose on its own? The nightmare ship drifted away slowly, leaving the broken Empire behind. But the silence it left was louder than any explosion, and across the stars the whispers grew. A single thought repeated in every mind. If this was only a test, what comes next? The black warship lingered at the edge of the capital system. Silent, vast, and untouchable, it did not fire. It did not move closer. It only watched. And in that stillness, the Empire trembled more than it had during the Great Battle. For silence can be heavier than war. Silence can crush the spirit more than fire. The people on the capital world gathered in plazas, on rooftops, in crowded chambers, staring up at the holoscreens that showed the nightmare ship floating above their empire's heart. Mothers held their children tighter. Merchants shut their stalls. Soldiers stood stiff, but their hands shook. Everyone waited for the fire that never came. In the great palace, the emperor raged, pacing his throne room, demanding answers, demanding action. But his admirals bowed their heads in silence. They had thrown fleets at the humans, and fleets had vanished. They had sworn the Empire was eternal. But now their own soldiers whispered another name in secret halls. Human. The warship finally spoke again, its voice booming across every channel, every device, every world. The words were calm but sharp as blades. We are not conquerors. We are not your enemy unless you choose to remain tyrants. We fight only those who oppress. We fight those who silence the weak. Your empire stands upon broken bones and stolen lives. We will not allow it forever. The words were simple, yet they carried more power than any weapon. In the streets of the outer colonies, people cheered. Rebels raised their banners higher. Miners in the deep belts dropped their tools and shouted with joy. Slaves whispered that their prayers had been answered. At last a force had come that even the Empire feared. But not all hearts were filled with hope. Some were filled with terror. Governors feared rebellion would spread like wildfire. Admirals feared the people would lose faith entirely. Merchants feared trade would collapse. And the Emperor feared something he had never feared before. The loss of obedience. The Empire had ruled not by kindness but by control, by crushing hope wherever it rose, but now humans had given hope a voice, and the people listened more to that voice than to their Emperor's commands. The admirals tried to rally. They declared the humans were deceivers. They spread propaganda claiming the warship was damaged, claiming the humans would not return. But the people remembered the words, "This is only a test." And no lies could erase that memory. In secret, some Imperial officers even contacted the humans, sending encrypted signals into the void, begging for alliance, begging for mercy. They feared being on the wrong side of history. They feared being remembered as servants of tyranny when justice came. And still the warship did not move. It hovered for days above the capital world, casting a shadow that could be seen even from the planet's surface. At night, children pointed at the stars and asked their parents if the humans were watching them sleep. Markets remained silent, theaters empty. Even the music of the capital grew quiet, all drowned by the silent presence of a ship larger than fear itself. Finally, the humans sent another message, softer, slower, yet stronger than thunder. We will not strike first, we will not burn the innocent. But if the Empire strikes again, if the Empire clings to chains and whips, then we will return with fire, we will return with fleets. You have one choice, change or fall. The words split the galaxy in two. Some worlds called the humans heroes. Others called them devils, but none ignored them. The whispers grew into debates. The debates grew into movements. The movements grew into uprisings. The Empire had been wounded not just in battle, but in spirit. And spirit spreads faster than flame. On the mining worlds, workers refused their overseers, shouting, "Humans are coming." On the border planets, militias raised their weapons, saying, "We do not need the Empire." Even in the capital itself, protests broke out. Banners calling for freedom, chants echoing the words of the nightmare ship. The Emperor tightened his grip, sending soldiers to silence them. But each act of cruelty only made the human words stronger. Every punishment, every beating, every execution proved the humans were right, proved the Empire was nothing but tyranny, and the warship remained, a black star above the throne, reminding everyone that the Empire was not untouchable, reminding everyone that change was coming. The admirals begged the Emperor to let them strike again, but fear poisoned their words. None wanted to face the nightmare ship once more. None wanted to command fleets into a slaughter. The Emperor screamed at them, called them cowards, but even he could see the truth in their eyes. The Empire's strength was broken. Days turned into weeks, and the human ship finally began to move, slowly drifting back toward the edge of the system. Not retreating, not defeated, but leaving behind something greater than fire, leaving behind a shadow that would never fade. The people whispered as it disappeared, some wept, some cheered, some trembled, but all knew the same truth: the humans had not come to conquer. They had come to awaken, and once awakened, a galaxy does not fall back asleep. The Galactic Empire still stood, its fleet still vast, its armies still countless, but its spirit was cracked, its people divided, its rulers afraid. And in the silence after the warship left, the question remained, a question heavier than any fleet. Would the Empire choose to change, or would the humans return with the fire they promised? The nightmare ship was gone, its black hull fading into the endless stars, but the shadow it left behind clung to the galaxy like a scar. The Galactic Empire tried to declare victory. Its officials shouted through broadcasts that the threat had passed, that the trespassers had been driven away, but no one believed them. The people had seen the truth with their own eyes. One ship had defeated an armada. One ship had stared down an empire. One ship had spoken words that carried more weight than 1,000 thrones. On the capital world, silence hung in the streets. Even as banners of the empire were raised, the people walked with doubt in their eyes. They looked up at the stars and whispered the name of the species they had once ignored. Human children drew pictures of the black warship in the dirt. Workers carved its shape into their tools. Soldiers muttered its name under their breath, not as an enemy but as a force greater than fear. The emperor tried to hide his rage. He sat in his throne chamber demanding loyalty, demanding silence, but cracks were everywhere. Governors no longer obeyed instantly. Admirals hesitated before carrying out his orders. Even the council that once bowed without question now argued in whispers. They had seen the weakness of their empire. They had seen the possibility of something else. Whispers grew into action across the stars. In mining colonies, workers refused to dig without pay, chanting that justice was coming. In prison, world's captives broke their chains, shouting that the humans had promised freedom. On distant border planets, militias formed, declaring they would no longer live under imperial command. They carried banners painted black, with a single white word in the center: human. The empire tried to respond with force. Fleets were sent to crush uprisings. Armies were deployed to silence rebels. But the soldiers themselves no longer carried the same fire. Many deserted before the first shot. Some even switched sides, fighting not for the emperor but for freedom. Every act of cruelty, every punishment, every massacre only fueled the legend, only proved that the humans were right in the outer systems. Rumors spread that more human ships had been seen, shadows gliding through the void, never attacking, never answering, just watching. Whether true or false, the fear was the same. No one knew when or where they might appear. No one knew if the next warship would be another test, or something far worse. The emperor called one final council. His voice shook with anger. He demanded a plan, demanded his commanders restore order. But the council was divided. Some still clung to pride, swearing they could build stronger fleets, stronger weapons. Others whispered that it was too late, that perhaps it was wiser to change, to soften, to loosen the chains before the humans returned. The emperor's fist struck the table, his face red with fury. But his advisors saw the fear behind his eyes, for even he, ruler of 1,000 worlds, knew what his people now believed. The empire was no longer eternal. It was no longer untouchable. It could be broken, far away. On worlds that had never known freedom, statues of the emperor were torn down, replaced by crude carvings of the black warship. People prayed to it as if it were a god. Rebels painted its outline on walls, whispering that the age of the empire was ending. The age of humanity was beginning, and yet the humans themselves remained silent. Their warship had vanished into the dark, leaving only the promise of return. Some called them saviors, others called them demons, but all agreed on one truth: they had power beyond imagination, and they had chosen not to use it for conquest. They had chosen instead to give the galaxy a choice. Change or fall, that choice now haunted every leader, every soldier, every citizen of the empire. They looked at their rulers with doubt. They looked at each other with hope. And in the silence left behind by the nightmare ship, a new fire began to burn. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy dreamed of something different. For the first time in centuries, people whispered of justice, of freedom, of courage. The humans had not just brought fear, they had brought possibility, and possibility is stronger than chains. On the throne world, The Emperor tried to sleep, but in his dreams he saw the warship, black and endless, its red light glowing like an eye, its voice echoing in his mind, "This is only the beginning." He woke in cold sweat, gripping his crown, knowing deep down that it was true. The galaxy had changed forever. The Empire could not return to what it was. The legend of the humans had spread too far. Their warning had cut too deep. Their shadow had made the mighty tremble and the weak rise. And somewhere in the silent dark between stars, the humans prepared. Their warship was not the end. It was the first note of a new song, a song that would echo across the galaxy, a song that whispered of survival, of defiance, of mercy, and of war. The Galactic Empire had ruled for centuries through fear, but fear now had a new name, and that name was human.